For more content like tonight's episode, make sure you check out the Al Nicoletti Facebook business page, the Al Nicoletti personal page, the YouTube channel under Al Nicoletti, and all the amazing content and the amazing past guests that I've had on the Al Nicoletti Show on iTunes and Spotify. Tons of amazing episodes, great different things in the Florida real estate realm. So make sure you check it out. And of course, you can get all the micro content that's coming out on the Instagram page at Attorney Nicoletti. Tons of content there. So make sure you check it out and enjoy the show today. We have a special guest. So enjoy, stick around, ask your questions, and enjoy everything tonight. Hey, everybody. My name's Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in the community that educate, entertain, and inspire all things on Florida real estate, right? We're here about Florida. It's all about Florida. We're trying to educate you on anything in this Florida market. We're not in Idaho. We're not in California. We're not in Illinois. All on the Florida market on how you can take your company to the next level. Great episode for all of you short-term rental Airbnbers out there. Everybody loves these short-term rentals. You all want to buy them. You go to these amazing courses, these seminars, and here you can get passive wealth, cash flow from amazing wealth investing in the Airbnb short-term rental market. And I have a great guest on the episode today. He is attorney Michael Guju, out all the way in that Tampa, Pinellas area in the west side of Florida. Great guest today. Going to masterclass us on all you need to know about Airbnb short-term rental. I do a new thing now on the show before I have the guests come on and talk about everything we need to know. It's important that you know who the guests are. I don't just bring on anybody. I really bring on people that know their stuff. They're seasoned people. They're really making it happen in the market. I really want to make sure people know who we have. And I have a CV. I have Mike's CV. Michael Guju is an entrepreneur and businessman with broad finance, legal, and marketing experience in real estate development, mortgages, and real estate transactional and real estate related services. So Mike has, I see his resume now. He's done so many things in like 20, 30 years. It's incredible. He's an attorney. He's licensed in 3 states, Florida, Ohio, Michigan, with 35 years plus real estate experience in business law, finance, real estate, title insurance, closings, contracts, and business matters. He's owned title companies. He's done things with Chicago Title. He's the director of several area companies. He's been involved in a developer of commercial and residential real estate. Mike has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to being a part of groups, being a part of real estate, and he has his own law firm, the Guju Law Firm, and he's got a title company. And he's ready to dive in and talk about all this stuff. And I can't wait to talk about all of it. So on the show, bottom line, short-term rental Airbnbs, we're going to talk about, one, the issue in short-term rentals. What's the issues when you get involved with them? Let's hear about it. Can you rent your property for short-term time periods? Right? Short-term rentals, what does that mean? What's the time periods? How do you know it's legal? He's an attorney. We're going to find out how legal it is tonight, right? What are some practical things to consider before renting short-term, and why Airbnb is the hottest trend right now? Well, I put that in there, Mike. Why it's the hottest trend, and are they investment gold with what you're doing? So we're going to dive in. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Michael Guju. Mike, so good seeing you. Last time I saw you, I was in Tampa. I had some reason I was there, and I was like, let's get lunch. And it was so good seeing you. I'm so happy to see you again on the show.
Al, it's great to be here. Thank you very much for having me. And I appreciate the introduction. I mean, goodness, after you listen to everything you said about me, it sounds like I can't hold a job. It sounds like, goodness gracious, I do so much that, I can't hold a job or anything. But I appreciate the introduction. Thank you very much.
We'll put number 7. Are you unemployable, right?
That's right. No, actually I have more opportunity. Really, I know what to do with. It's one of the amazing words in English language is no. When someone asks you to do something or do, an opportunity presents itself or whatever, it's really an amazing thing to say, I can't do anymore. No, I can't do it. Thank you, but no. So I say that a lot sometimes. I will say that. So anyways, it's great to be here. Thank you very much, Al. It's been several months since we talked, hasn't it?
I know. I was thinking, was it March? Was it May? I don't even remember now. It's a
I
blur.
don't know. It was a long time ago, and I love the production value on this podcast. I mean, it was tremendous. I mean, I've done some audiovisual things, and this is you're good. You're good. This is good. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
We're making it happen, and we love bringing guests like you on the show that have the knowledge and the charisma, and we just love it. So, Mike, for those that don't know who you are, tell everybody who you are, what you do for your profession, your career, but where you came from, right? Like, where did this all start? And how has it translated to now? And how have you fine tuned that niche with that short term rental? And you're an investor yourself.
Okay, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but as you could tell, I'm from the Midwest. I'm licensed in Ohio, Michigan, and Florida, and so I'm originally from Ohio. I spent some time in Michigan. I was with a lot of large companies, law firms, and what have you, and I sort of found my niche back in 1996. Yes, I've been a lawyer that long. In fact, I've been a lawyer for 37 years. Can you imagine that? I know your viewers are saying, man, he looks really young for 37-year experience. But no, I have been a lawyer a long time. But at that point, in 96, we moved down to Florida. We took a job running a small company. And at that point, I really had a chance to expand my business leanings, my inclinations to do business, to build companies, and what have you. Not just to be a lawyer, but also to do other things. So, quite honestly, I'm aggressive. I'm very risk tolerant. A lot of people are risk adverse. I'm not. But the secret to accepting risk is to put that risk in a small box. The smaller the box, the better. I'm trying to show you here. Wait a second here. The smaller the box, the better. If you could get, after analyzing the risk, if you could get that risk in a small box, then that means usually it's a good thing to do, to go ahead and make that investment. So really, the more knowledge you have, not just in being a lawyer, but also in real estate development, running businesses, hiring, firing people, managing folks. Airbnb is really an entrepreneurial business, and that was right up my alley. So that's how I ended up with it. It wasn't a grand plan. I just bought some property and I decided to rent it out short term. That's what I did.
So, for everybody out there that's watching, we have the audience, right? If you have questions during this episode, Mike will take them live Q&A. We'll make sure we get the questions. We'll put them up on the screen. So make sure while we're kind of going back and forth, put them up there, because he's going to dive in on all of this stuff. And we're about to find out what the issues are, what you have to have maybe for the short-term rental contracts, what happens after, and a bonus question even for me. I'm not going to forget it, because it's what I asked Mike when we met and had lunch was, how do you kick out somebody if they're overstaying their welcome at a short-term rental? Yes. We'll get into that. But Mike, let's dive in. So,
okay, well, yeah. If I may, let me try to put this in context, because in starting, I thought, okay, what am I going to say? I could address the legal requirements, the things you have to do to make sure that your Airbnb is proper. When you're looking at property, can you Airbnb it, or can you short-term rental it? Also, some practical matters, because I do have Airbnb rentals, short-term rentals. When I say short-term rentals, I'm talking Airbnb. And I've learned there's really three things that you need to do to be a successful short-term rental landlord. That's obviously non-legal, but it's more practical. It's more business-like. So wherever you want to start, Al, I am 100% down for that.
So let's start on the legal side, because that's where it gets really technical, right? That's where all the rules and everything you really have to know. And then let's shift to the practical side, because half of that stuff probably never happens, or you never even really see it, right? That's like law school, right? They made us read all these books, all these contract things, constitutional law, and then I haven't even applied con law at all. So let's start on the legal side.
I agree. Okay. Well, you know what? What's happening in short-term rentals? This is a hot area of the law. Believe it or not, there is a hot area in the law, in real estate law, and this is probably it. because you have some really big players who are going at each other, some really big players who are jockeying for position, for control, for viability. They want to influence what the laws and the regulations say to their benefit. So really what you have, the players in this situation are, you have, and I'm looking at a presentation because I teach classes in this sometimes. I'm looking at a PowerPoint. On the one hand, you have technology. You have some really game traders, VRBOs, Airbnbs. These people came in and they just shook up our industry. They kicked the sleepy area of the law, rentals, and they shook it up and they just put it on adrenaline on the one hand. And then you have the neighbors. If I have a rental, if I have a short-term rental, I have a neighbor on probably both sides and one behind me. So I've got to contend with the neighbors, and the neighbors who are disturbed are going to their elected officials. And that's another area is municipalities and counties. They're getting all this pressure. The police are showing up for big parties. You got the neighbors next door who don't know their neighbors now. They used to have a nice, quiet neighborhood. They used to have barbecues with their neighbors. Now there's people coming in from Utah. Not that there's anything wrong with Utah, but I mean, there's people coming in from Canada or wherever they're coming from, renting their property, and they don't know them. You've got on the other hand, and I think I'm up to 3 hands now. You've got landlords and owners. We own the property. I'm a landlord and owner. If I'm owning the property, I want to do things with my property. That's my right. And then finally, you have other short-term rentals, motels, hotels, B&Bs, small mom and pop hotels. I live in Tampa Bay, and my property, I own a lot of property, but some of it is on the beaches. So you have enormous number of 10, 15, 30, 25 room motels up and down the beach, and they're owned by mom and pops, and they're under some pressure because now the houses down the street are renting rooms for less than they're renting a room. So those are some of the players. Some of the issues are, again, you've got the tussle between the state government, state control versus local control, municipalities and Pinellas County, or municipalities and the counties. They each want to rule who makes the rules. You've got the neighbors competing, landlords competing, other hotels and Airbnb or other hotels and motels competing against you. Now, Al, I'm seeing questions here like Kobe is let's see, he's a hungry pit bull at the front door. It's not legal, but it works. Should I answer some of these questions here?
We can put some things up. You don't even have to look at them on the left side. You just keep going. If we see it as the question, we'll put it up on the screen. We'll make sure we'll get to that at the end. So the idea, the idea is that as long as people know that you're watching, you're listening, you're doing whatever, that you ask questions, drop them in. We'll make sure we get to them. Let's get some good questions out there. We'll make sure we get them in. And you got Mike live. I mean, it's almost like a free consult in a way, right?
Absolutely. I charge a lot of money per hour, guys. So ask all the good questions. If I may, Al, I heard what you said. There are a couple of good questions. One of the viewers says the best way to remove a short-term tenant is to remove the bathroom and front door for needed repairs. I have seen that done before, and quite honestly, that's not a bad idea. I think I've seen that it's probably illegal, but at the same time, you got to understand, landlord and tenant law is not the same as transient short-term tenant law. And what I mean by that is there is an entire body of law in Florida, well, every state, that deals with landlord and tenant issues, and it's highly regulated. But short-term rentals, i.e. Airbnbs, do not fit in that landlord-tenant. It fits into the law of hotels and motels. That is a lot easier to get a guest. We call them a guest out from a hotel and motel. In fact, all you have to do is basically tell the police they're disturbing the peace, and the police will make them go. You can't do that with a normal long-term landlord-tenant. So do you need to remove the doors and windows? I don't think you do for short-term rentals because there's a lot easier ways to do that. Someone's talking about a hungry pit bull at the front door. First off, I don't know about your short-term rental properties, but my insurance does not cover angry dog breeds like pit bulls, German shepherds, any of the bulls, what have you. So I cannot rent to tenants with those animals. I love the animals, but I can't do it. So I don't tend to have a hungry pit bull at the door because I don't let them in the first place. Let's see. So going back to the legal requirement, there are so many players involved, and they're all jockeying for position. And honestly, it's one of those situations where we don't know what's going to happen. But I'm telling you, over the last probably 5 years, every session in Tallahassee has dealt with this with this dilemma, and that is, on the one hand, you have technology, the big people coming in and influencing. It's like Uber and the taxi industry. Uber came and shook up the taxi industries so much. And it's the same thing at Airbnb, VRBO, and the other technology. Neighbors are jumping on their politicians' necks, saying, "What's going? Control these people. I don't want the loud music next door and people, partying on the front lawn." Landlord owners, property rights is a protected category in Tallahassee. And I'm pleased for that because I'm a landlord, I'm an owner, but at the same time, I do appreciate some of the other things. Municipalities want their taxes, they want their degree of control. The municipalities and counties, the neighbors are coming and complaining to them about the loud noise and the parties and the weddings in the middle of the street and this type of thing. And of course, hotels the other way. So there's a lot to this. What happened? The state of the law in Florida. 10 years ago, in the year 2011, so the state legislature passed a very broad short-term rental law. And what it did was it basically froze regulation of the short-term rental by municipalities and counties in time. And they said from now on, you cannot impose restrictions on the owners of these properties. Excuse me a moment. So that happened in 2001. The state exempted local laws. Well, that was a huge blow to these towns. Like I said, I own a lot of property on the beaches. That was a huge blow to these little towns that controlled their little towns. They have a population of 2,000 in the city, and now they were exempted. Now, it's not that the laws before 2011 were overridden. It just said that cities cannot regulate rentals in residential neighborhoods, talk about duration and the frequency of those rentals. But they grandfathered the existing regulations in 2011. So if there were regulations before 2011, you had to follow those. But any future regulations, any changes, were severely limited. Well, that got a lot of the towns and municipalities and the counties going to Tallahassee and say, "Listen, you can't do that. You can't change this." The existing grandfather regulations were like land use, zoning, and ordinances. Anything before 2011 is enforceable. Anything after, not so much. Okay, that's a very strong on property rights because Tallahassee decided if you own property, you should be able to decide what you do with it. But it did set it up for an ongoing political battle, and it is a battle royale in Tallahassee. Every session, there's something going on. And actually, in this past session, Manny, oh, he's an elected official from the Miami area. Manny Diaz, that's it. Came out and with a proposal, and it didn't make it out the committees, so it was never passed. But it was going to shift a lot of responsibility to the state. So it's that went down. So the bottom line is strong on property rights, and it's an ongoing political battle. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some things, the thinking process. If you're going to do short-term rentals, there's a thinking process that you need to employ before you get there. Now, I see. Let's see. I'm going to look at some of the questions we have. I'm just getting started in short-term rental. What type of insurance do you suggest I have to cover myself? I believe in a good relationship with your insurance agent. I would tell them that you're doing short-term rentals. First, start with rentals, okay? And all the short-term rentals that I have started out as long-term rentals. And so what happened was, let's see, hold on. There you go. So I just told my agent, I'm doing short-term rentals. And at that point, they knew what to do. It costs a little bit more, but quite honestly, I feel better covered. I know that there's also insurance, I think, through Airbnb. And I'm going to get to some of these things in a second. But you want to make sure you have great insurance. So Karen, absolutely. I would just be honest with your agent, say, I want to do short-term rentals. What do you require? And let's get that done. Let's see. I'm trying to see anything else.
This is great. I like how you're doing. If you find this works, this is great. Live interactive questions right on the spot. Go for it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Al. Cut me, Al. There's no pride of authorship in what I'm saying. So if I'm going in a certain way and you want me back in another way, just let me know.
So I did see
one.
Yeah.
You know what? If I may, Al, Dennis asked a great question, and I'm telling you right now, this happened to me, Dennis. And let me read his question. He said, "What do you do about partying, drunken students who vomit all over the furniture?" Okay, Dennis, thank you for asking this. In the July 4th weekend of 2020, so in the middle of the pandemic, one of my units was rented out, and it was switched at the last minute to an underage renter. It was a majority person who rented it out, and at the last minute, Airbnb allowed an underage renter to come in and to put her name on it. And what happened over the July 4th weekend was an enormous number of kids, underage, teenagers, early 20s, and that's about it. They had parties after parties. And you know what? Let's see. College kids vomiting. Yeah, we had that problem. Listen, guys, the only thing I did is I picked up the phone. I called the Indian Shores Police. Now you know where my properties are located. I called the local police who had jurisdiction. They came down with about 5 cop cars, and they just ushered them all out. If they were under 17 years old, the kids, the underage, the minors had to call their parents, or else they weren't getting off the property. Those who were of majority age, if they were sober, they were allowed to go. They broke it up and they kicked them out. I locked the door, and I had a cleaning crew go in there. And frankly, the damage that they did actually was not that severe. I mean, I probably had no more than $100 worth of damage, but I was ready to go to Airbnb and tell them I want to get paid. And they've been pretty good about stuff, reimbursing me. So that's what happened with that question about on the college students, getting violent. I call the police and just get them out. That's what I do. I don't, I'm an old guy. I don't put up with that.
And Karen had a really good follow-up question. Is there an insurance policy that will cover you from that kind of damage?
From the damage that guests do, I'm not sure there is. There might be. I think that's the best question. Al, I'm not going to buffalo people. I think that's the best question asked to your insurance agent. They're the ones that could answer what happens, if a tenant destroys something. I've never been in that situation. The only thing that I had was, partiers like that July 4th, 2020. But they were just very disruptive. They were throwing up and urinating outside. All the neighbors were getting up in arms, and finally the police came down and threw them all out. And that was the end of it.
So let's just go through a list or just bullet points. So
Mm-hmm.
the common issues on the legal side, not the practical, but the legal side, common issues you find with short-term rentals.
The common issues for short-term rentals. All right. On the legal, did you say on the legal or the business practical side?
You can mix and match whatever works best.
Okay. Tell you what, rather than jump around, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the legal things here real quick. Folks, I'll get to your question. Some of the to answer your question that you just asked, Al, what are some of the most common things on the legal side? It's folks who do not do their homework before advertising for short-term rentals and having short-term rental people come in. A small amount of time done ahead of time saves a lot of headache for you at some later point. And for instance, I've had clients who will go out and buy property specifically so they could short-term rental it because they can make profits at it. And when I asked them, I said, "Have you checked the zoning?" They said, "Well, it's residential, so it should be okay." And so what I did is I put together a thinking process here. I'm not showing it to the viewers here, but it's my PowerPoint. It's a step-by-step, I think, process you have to follow. And that is, number one, check land use and zoning. Is the property zoned residential or commercial hotel? Believe it or not, short-term rentals really don't fit into most categories of residential zoning. They fit into the commercial or hotel categories of zoning. So you have to be cautious. My property, for instance, is on the beaches here in Tampa Bay, and it's zoned ROR 15, which is retail, office, residential 15, which is 15 units per acre. So I'm zoned for short-term rentals, or transient housing is what they call it, transient accommodations. So you want to check out, first thing is check out the land use and the zoning for the property that you have. You also want to check local laws and ordinances. The last couple of years, this has been a hot area in the law. So most cities, counties have already passed laws that deal with the properties, short-term rental properties, because it's such a problem now. And depending on when they passed it, whether it was grandfathered in or not, will determine whether it's in effect or whether those laws must be followed. But it's hard to say whether a particular town, because there's probably thousands of towns here in Florida. So I just have to speak in generality. So check your local laws and ordinances, and really the cutoff is 2011. Anything before 2011 is considered, if you will, enforceable by towns and counties. Get a license from the DBPR. Very, very important. Also check to see whether your local government, that's municipalities and counties, require a license too. DBPR has a short application. DBPR, a Department of Business and Professional Regulation. It's part of the state of Florida, and it's in the executive branch. So DBPR does a lot of regulating of professional regulations. So they have a license for it. Also, some municipalities have licenses. My little town where my property is located on the beach does have a license also. And what I do is I believe in a communication, being honest, being forthright, being a good citizen, being a good resident. So I like to work with local officials to avoid a problem. If there's a problem came up, I want to call them and say, listen, this is what I'm doing. What are your thoughts? And if they're wrong, I point it out to them. Or if I'm wrong, they point it out to me. For instance, on my properties, I got a zoning official, police officer, came and cited one of my properties. And it turned out he was a really great guy because we started communicating with each other. I said, I really think these are legal. I said, look at the zoning that I have. Look at the zoning prior to 2011. I sent him some statutes and whatever. I said, I think I'm really legal. I took it up to the town attorney, and he basically said, yeah, I was right. But what was good is now I get phone calls from that particular zoning official, and we talk not about my property but about other property and in the town. So it led to better things. Another part of the process, the thinking process, is question the appropriateness of the property for short-term rentals. I've taught my boys, I have two grown boys, I've taught them, just because you could do something doesn't mean you should. And that's a very dad saying. So you probably, your dads may have said that. But my point in saying that is, just because you could rent something out short-term doesn't necessarily mean you should. If you are in a transient neighborhood, a neighborhood like the beaches where people come and go, they'll be here for a month, that's 30, 60, 90 days, for a week, 2 weeks, whatever. If they're used to that turnover, then that tells me that the area of property is susceptible and would accept some short-term rentals without causing too much commotion. If you're in a well-established community where families have been there and they've raised their kids there, and they've been there for 10, 20, 30 years, guess what? Short-term rentals aren't going to work there. They have block parties, and they've known each other for 20 years. Their kids grew up together. I live in a neighborhood like that in North Pinellas County. It's a very established community, and frankly, I don't think we have any short-term rentals there because, frankly, they wouldn't fit in there. So I think you have to ask yourself: is the property I'm looking at appropriate for this? Does the neighborhood have long-term leases or short-term leases? Is the neighborhood primarily first or second homes, third homes? Are they vacation homes? Things like that. That tells you whether a neighborhood or a particular piece of property that you own should or can be a short-term rental without regard to what the law is. In other words, it would be accepted by the neighbors. Other things that are now getting into more into the business side, the entrepreneur side that I have. What rules will I, as the landlord, impose on my short-term renters? What type of relationship will I have with my neighbors? Will I put up strong fences to protect my guests as well as protect my neighbors from the short-term renters? All these are things that you want to go through in your mind to avoid further problems. And if you do this, then really you're I think in pretty good stead going forward. You won't have to call the police like I occasionally have to do because of rowdiness. So, are there any questions? Let's see.
Oh, great, Mike. All see, when you bring an attorney on the show, all you got to do is say, "What's an Airbnb short-term rental law?" This blah blah blah. Let it go. Right. This is what we need to learn. We need to know these basic things because a lot of investors, they buy the property, they say, "Oh, I want to Airbnb it." Like, I don't even know if you can do it. Like, what part of the municipality is it? Like, over here, you'll have Jack's Beach, and then you have Neptune Beach, and like you can't do it in Neptune, but then you can do it in Jack's Beach. I think we were kind of talking about that at lunch, like, knowing your zoning or what's happening in your rezoning, knowing what's going on in your government, municipality, and that's being involved in that to kind of know what's happening and making sure you're not jumping in an area that's not going to be Airbnb friendly.
Right. And it's really important to do your work up front because this is such a hot area where it drives your neighbors crazy. It drives the people you hire to take care of the property crazy if things don't work out. You really have to have the patience of Job and the diplomacy of a Kissinger in order to pull off short-term rentals sometimes. And I've done that. If I may, Al, I'd like to get back to a little bit of the law, but first, early on, I said there were three areas that you want to master if you're going to have more than one or two short-term rental properties. If the more short-term rental properties that you have, you really have to get this down to a science, and then it becomes a big business for you. And there are three areas that I've learned that I have to take care of. Number one is this. I'm sorry. I have an individual who takes care of my marketing, answers the questions of guests and potential guests. He interfaces directly with the guests when they come in, during their stay, and even afterwards. He writes reviews and what have you. I pay him a certain percent of the intake, and that's what he does. So everyone, one of the first categories I think that you have to have if you're going to do Airbnb on a larger scale than 1Z or 2 units or 3 units, is you want someone, and that someone could be you, by the way, Al, or it could be one of your listeners, to coordinate. That person is a coordinator, coordinating the marketing, the sales, the descriptions, the entries, answering on the websites, answering questions of someone coming and saying, hey, would you accept less? Or, hey, are these dates open? They're the ones that coordinate and communicate with the guests during the entire process. The second thing that you really need to be aware of is you really need to have someone readily accessible who can go over and do something, take care of the property should something happen. Now, the properties that I have only 3 short-term rentals. The rest are long-term rentals. And what I did was I have someone who lives on site, lives in one of the units. And that person landscapes, trims the trees, takes care of things, will take out the trash from all the units once or twice a week. She'll run them out to the curb to make sure they get empty, because remember, your guests, tenants know to take them out to the curb, but guests many times don't. And so that person is sort of like a property manager. It's an on-site property manager, or someone who lives in the neighborhood who could go by every day and just sort of look at things, and what have you. So that's the second category. So remember, the first one is, if you will, a coordinator, a short-term rental coordinator. The second is if you will, a maintenance or a property manager type person. If the chain comes off a toilet, this person, at 7 o'clock at night can go over to put the chain on, or can do some basic things, some basic maintenance. The third category that you really have to be very good at is cleaners. These are the individuals who go in to the properties and clean them when a guest leaves and before the next guest comes in. Now, during high season, because in Florida we have high season here, and that's basically from January 1st to the end of April, the end of May. It depends where you are in Florida, but if any of the short-term rental landlords out there rented, I mean, this past season was literally hand-to-hand combat in getting rentals and getting these guests in and out. I mean, there were months on end when a guest would move out in the morning and a new guest would come in the afternoon. And in the meantime, you've got to wash all the linens. You've got to repair any damages. If they broke a hinge on a door, someone has to be there to fix it. Everything has to be cleaned up on the inside, washed and taken care of. There's a lot. And if they're checking out by 10 a.m. and the new person checks in at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, things could be tight. So if you're going to be a good short-term rental landlord, if you're going to have more than 1 or 2, 3 units, you really have to have these 3 mastered: a coordinator, a Johnny on the spot, landscaper, a handyman, someone who could look after the property, and then finally cleaners, someone who could go in and take care of everything so that when the next tenant moves in, you're ready to go. So from a practical standpoint, I mean, we were very busy here on the beaches here in Pinellas County. Day to day, there were entire months when we didn't have a free day. And
Wow.
when people are moving in every 3, 4, 5, 6 days, and you got 3, I need a cleaning person there literally every day, and sometimes doing 2 cleanings in one day.
So, Mike, question for you.
Yes, sir.
When you're doing these agreements, they're not rental agreements, right? So they're like,
No.
what kind of contracts are you using? What kind of things are you preparing that can secure yourself or people that do this in the business to make sure that they account for all these damages, they account for all these issues, they can make sure they get these people out? What are you using for that?
Al, that is an excellent question. And again, I briefly alluded to it, but for short-term rentals, it's really important to distinguish the difference between a landlord-tenant relationship and a short-term rental or like a hotel relationship. Landlord-tenant is a relationship that's guided by the lease. The terms of the lease, provided they're not illegal, against public policy, or immoral or fattening, are enforceable. So your lease determines what happens on a landlord-tenant lease. And then if it violates law, of course, that provision of the lease doesn't apply. When it comes to a hotel, because that's basically what you're running, a short-term rental is really like a hotel. It's transient housing. It's not landlord tenant, it's transient. So a person's going to come in, and really, when you go into a hotel, do you sign a lease agreement? No. What happens is it's guided by a different law. The law is basically that the owner of the property, I don't even want to call the person a landlord, because in transient, you're really not considered a landlord, I guess. But the person who owns the property has a lot of rights over their guests. I don't call them tenants. Short-term rentals are for guests, not tenants. So consequently, when someone comes in, if you go into your Marriott, do you read a lease agreement? Do you sign a lease agreement? No. You just agree to abide by the rules and regulations of the hotel. You agree to abide by the local statutes, local rules. And if you are disturb someone, then indeed they could get you out, and they'll get you out that night. When the police come, that's it. I mean, if you could convince them that you're worthy of staying, they may let you stay. But it's really up to the landlord and the police. Now, or not the landlord, I guess the owner, the hotel owner. Now, what about damages? Al, there's so many times. I mean, Florida is a great place to go. People love to come down to Florida from Ohio or Michigan. I'm from the Midwest, and party. I mean, I know that. I did it when I was in college, and people are still doing it. What happens if there are damages? Well, there's a couple of things that you could do to prevent damages from happening. Have a good relationship with a guest. You only have these guests here for 3, 4, 5 days, maybe a week, maybe 10 days, whatever. Stop by, introduce yourself. If they put a face on the management and put a face on the ownership, it's a lot harder to damage something. Now, if it's a lot easier to go into a large corporation hotel and look at it and say, well, it's just, they'll just write it off. It's a cost of doing business. But when your guests look at you and say, it's Mike owns the place, okay, that's a little different. They personalize it. Number 2 is, it depends how you put things into VRBO and Airbnb and some of the other sites, whether you require a security deposit. When people come in and they want to bring a dog, we take a security deposit. We will charge them for having an animal, but also we say there may be a security deposit. Now, that may not work very well to some people because they think that you're just going to seize the security deposit and that's it. We don't do that. Okay, I mean, if someone puts in a security deposit, if there's no damage, we absolutely give it back. In fact, we race to give it back. We want them to do that because then they'll leave a good review for us. And we don't get a lot of damage because of that. But we don't get a lot of damage. People are pretty concerned. I mean, we get a little bit of theft. Because I have washers and dryers in some of my units. If I leave too much laundry soap there, sometimes it disappears. Toilet paper sometimes disappears, but people are not that bad. I mean, the damage is really not that significant.
So, Mike, I got a question, and I saw Kobe had a really good question too. So, if I'm going to buy a property, right, and I want to do the whole short-term rental, what am I using as the contract? Because we're not using a lease agreement. It's not that at all. Like, I mean, are you modeling that kind of contract after what the hotels do? So, like, you just go get a hotel agreement, and basically that you can use that kind of model for the Airbnb. Like, if I came to you and said, I need a real contract for these people that keep coming in and out short-term rental, whether it's a day, whether it's up to a week or 3 months. What is that? And also something you brought up that was really good too is reviews, right? What's the key to getting incredible reviews, doing all of those things? Like, what steps are you taking to get that? Because that is what grows your short-term rental.
Okay, let's, Al, if I may, you're looking at it from a very legal lawyer standpoint. You want to say, what is the agreement you're using? How do you use this agreement? Does it work? In landlord-tenant, this is the distinction between landlord-tenant and basically short-term rental transient housing, is there's different laws that apply to each. The landlord-tenant is highly evolved, very specific, lots of case law on it. But that's not the body of law that pertains to short-term rental, to transient housing. And I've used that term because that's actually what is in the ordinances, the laws, and the zoning. They call it transient housing. There is really no written contract like a lease. You keep coming back to, well, are you using the Marriott lease? Well, you'll notice that if you go and make a reservation at a Marriott, you could do it over the phone. Give them your credit card. When you go there are some fine print on the bottom of the forms, but quite honestly, there's not really an agreement like us lawyers are used to. There's no landlord-tenant 8-page agreement. You go into, your Hyatt hotel, you sign the bottom acknowledging the rate. You sign the bottom saying that there won't be any smoking, for instance. You sign the bottom of the invoice. It's a 1-page. It doesn't have very much small print at all. It's because you fall under the area of short-term rental law, basically, which is everything's in favor of the owner of the property. If Hyatt wants to get me out because I'm partying too much at their hotel, they come in, knock on the door, and they ask me to be quiet. The second time they come by and they say, if this continues, we'll ask you to leave. Third time they come by with the sheriff and they say, you got to leave. And at that point, that's what happens. So these guests are really at the mercy of the landlord, of the owner of the property, because all the laws are pretty much in the landlord's favor.
Great answer. Now I know. I had no idea. I mean, you don't know what this kind of stuff, because I'm thinking like a little. You're coming into this place. You're almost like that licensee. Like you're using it, and so you would think there's some kind of agreement. But I understand that. Also, Kobe had a good question, and you probably already answered it though. But can you have a lease for long-term rentals, but a short-term lease to help with getting you out should you not perform?
Yes. I have seen some of these leases that people do, and it's a landlord-tenant lease, so it will fit into, usually the cutoff is about 30 days. For transient housing is anything less than 30 days. Some zoning goes up to like no leasing less than 180 days, 6 months. Can you do a lease for long-term with an early out? Yes, I've seen that before. Sometimes people do that to get around some of the zoning restrictions. If they're in a neighborhood, let's say, I'm going to say RS10. I'm looking at the zoning map right now on this community property where I own my property, and right behind my property is an RS10, single residential, no more than 10 units an acre, and they cannot rent out, according to zoning, less than, I think it's 30 days. Well, can they do a lease for 31 days? And I think this is what he's getting at, okay? I think this is what Kobe's getting at, is can you do a lease for 31 days, not be in violation of the law because it's 31 days long, but yet give the tenant or the guest an early out based on maybe a 1-day notice, 24-hour notice that they're not happy, they get to move out. Yeah, I have seen that done, Kobe. And if that's what you're talking about, I think that it works until it doesn't work. So it works until someone calls you on it, or one of the neighbors says something, or the city or the county is aggressive and knocks on your door and says, it seems like people are coming in, not staying very long, not staying the requisite 30 days. What gives? And at that point, then I think the jig is going to be up, because if you keep doing 31-day leases and everyone terminates it, then I mean, they'll eventually say this is not appropriate. Don't do it.
Also, Mike, let's not forget to get back to the reviews, because having great reviews for your short-term rental is good for your business. But I saw a question here from Karen. Karen asks, is it easier to rent if you make your unit pet friendly?
Yes, that's an excellent question, Karen. 2 of my 3 units are pet friendly. I do let cats and dogs and peacocks and potbelly pigs and that type of thing. And we do ask for a full disclosure. Sometimes we ask for a picture ahead of time. We try to keep them certain breeds, certain weight. Well, our insurance requires that we not accept certain breeds, but yes, pet friendly is very important. The reason why I have 2 of my 3 units that are pet friendly is because there's tile throughout the entire first floor. And well, they're all 1-floor units, by the way. So they have tile throughout everything, in the bathroom, in the kitchen, living room, bedrooms, the whole shooting match. So you have tile throughout. So if there's a mess, it's a lot easier to clean up. I don't really have carpet in any of my units, any of the 3, specifically for that reason. Someone's going to, bring sand in or dirt or, drop something on a carpet, and that's why I don't want carpet there. So, so pet friendly is very important. We find that it goes quickly. We do charge $100, $200 for extra for a pet. I will say that, let's see, anyone with a pet knows how difficult it is and how expensive it is to find a lodging for a pet for anything longer than overnight or 2 nights or 3 nights or what have you. We have pets in our family. One of my sons does, and he'll tell you that, if he can find a pet place, a place where he could go ahead and lodge his dog. It's a small dog, for a Pomeranian. It's $50 a night. It's $60 a night. It's more. My brother just told me he was going to a wedding in Ohio. I mean, he went and he said, Mike, I couldn't find any place to lodge my 2 dogs. And they're medium-sized dogs, not a violent breed, a breed known for violence, but he couldn't find any. So, I mean, quite honestly, yeah, people bringing pets, huge thing. Yes. Reviews. Oh, go ahead, Al.
Just real quick, she said, what about fleas?
Oh, yes, you got to check with fleas. Fleas are a major problem in a lot of major cities. What we do is every once in a while, we have a UV light that we check for fleas. When I say we, I don't. but I could because I've studied it enough. I know where to look. Okay. But I have someone come in, check all the mattresses, check the desk drawer corners, the carpets and what have you. If you're going to have fleas, it's going to be on your bed, your mattresses. And so consequently, we get new mattresses on a regular basis. We cover all the mattresses at all times. So we keep them covered with, I guess, a plastic covering. I'm not sure what it's called. It slips on mattresses and the box springs. We change that every once in a while. Everything, we have 2 to 3 sets, full sets of sheets and towels for every unit, so that if we notice something on one, we know what to do. So in our units, we haven't had bed bugs, but it's probably because we're cognizant. My property manager down there is pretty leery of those. So she will go on many times and check in the corners. And if you go on YouTube, you know where these bed bugs can be found. So you could do it yourself, but I bring in professionals every once in a while to do it. Yes.
Great. So now we know. That's great.
Thank you.
So tell us, Mike, how do you get these incredible reviews? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're just going, shaking hands, kissing babies, and saying,
That's
"Look,
right.
this
That's
is
right.
what my business is." Like, you got to help us out here. What are you doing to get those 5-star reviews?
Well, I mean, there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of politician. People who do Airbnb, these short-term rentals, they're part of a community. Okay, they will take great pride that they did an Airbnb in Montreal, or they did an Airbnb in New York or St. Pete, and now they're on the beach. And we recently had someone from Florida stay at one of my units, and the review and how she described herself was interesting, because she viewed herself as part of a larger entity called short-term rentals, vacation rentals, that type of thing. She said she was taking her family to see the world using this method. And I read it a couple of times. I thought, man, she's really, she feels us. And so consequently, when it comes to reviews, these people really review the reviews. It's very important. So knowing that you're a person, you're a realistic person, is good. Here, hold on a second.
Yeah, those reviews, they can really help you or they can hurt you. Yeah. Like, what do you do when you get that review that was not good? Like, what's your response? Like, how do you?
And we have that. We've had that. One time we had a problem. Someone didn't clean a unit very well. One of my cleaners, and the people came in, and the people, the guests there, they were actually pretty good about it. They started cleaning, but you see, they were hosts on Airbnb. Most people who use Airbnb are hosts on Airbnb. So you'll get probably 25% of your people, 30% of your guests are hosts. They know what to expect. So she was a host, and she didn't leave a very good review, and we got chastised by Airbnb on this. It was a problem. One of the cleaners missed her day and didn't go in and didn't do try to do a fast job because she missed the day. Reviews. What do you want to do? When we had a threat of a hurricane, remember that hurricane, Al, that was threatening like the Gulf Coast? When was it? A couple of weeks ago. What I did is I went to every one of my units. I dropped off like a 12 pack of water. I gave them a flashlight, an LED flashlight, something that you get for $2 somewhere, but that has 5 hours in case they did it. I knocked on the door. We talked a little bit about it. So, of course, you're going to get great reviews out of that. Okay. So you want to be prompt. You want to talk to them. Some people are very unreasonable. There are a lot of unreasonable people out there. And, someone who would come in and say, I found ants in my bathroom. This happened one time, and they're from out of state. Now, anyone who knows Florida knows that there's a lot of ants here because we have sand. Okay. you know, we had to explain that it was raining and some of the ants probably came in, and we're sorry about that. And I put down more ant baits, but you know, there's some things I can't really solve.
Right.
So you talk to them. You know, it's how you talk to people while they're there. If they have a problem, hey, we ran out of soap. That's when that property manager you have there can run a bar of soap over to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's how you get reviews. The people, the guests, the overwhelming majority of these guests want to leave good reviews, and they really bend over backwards to give you the benefit of the doubt. And if you try and you communicate with them and really just try to be conscientious, you'll get a good review and you'll be a super host in no time. We're a super host.
You're a super host?
Yes. Mm-hmm. We've been a super host for months, even though we've made mistakes. We have made mistakes. And, you know, that happens. People, you know, and there's also ways. Oh, by the way, there's also ways to communicate that the guest can communicate with the owner, either on the side or through something that's a communication device, like with Airbnb, that's not seen by the general public. So, you know, I've had people say, you know, the public reviews are great. It's right next to the beach. Many people say it's next to the beach, but this really is a 3-minute walk to the beach, because it is. My properties are literally across the street from the beach. And they say, most people say, you know, that it's next to the beach, but it's a 15-minute walk. No. And they'll say glowing things like that. And then in the private comments, they'll say, hey, you may want to change the toilet paper because the toilet paper you had there was really rough. True. I just had someone do this from St. Petersburg, here in Tampa Bay. They didn't like the toilet paper. And I mean, I get it, but they sent me a side comment saying, hey, you know, the great place, but that toilet paper is not too user friendly.
Of all things, great experience.
Of all things, I swear to God, it happens. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Mike, you know, this is all great info, you know, from reviews to what to be aware of in your municipalities and understanding your governments. And what do you see there?
Oh, Karen. Holy cow, this Karen is quite prolific. She's asking, wow, Karen, if you're there, good questions. God, one in particular caught my, oh, she said thank you. So she is there. One of the things that caught my eye, Karen, is what are your thoughts on rental arbitrage and ownership? Very good question. Okay. May I address this? I know it's after the 9 o'clock.
Go.
Okay. All right. What Karen, I think, is talking about, and I've seen this done, is someone will come in and do let's say, a long-term rental on a beach property. Okay. Because that's mostly what I deal with, Karen. And they will rent it for like 12 months. And then what they do is they basically sub-rent it out to guests on Airbnb. And I'm sorry, I've got some allergies, so please forgive me for the coughing. And I think that's what the rental arbitrage term that she's using there versus ownership. She's asking, is it better for Karen to go out and buy a unit or buy, let's say, a house and short-term Airbnb, short-term rental it out? Or is it best for her to just go out and rent long-term a rental unit, and then she, if you will, sublease it out to short-term tenants, and thus make the arbitrage. The arbitrage is the amount, is the delta between what she's paying per month for long-term rent and what she's making for short-term rentals. That difference right there between my hands is the arbitrage. That's, I think, what she's asking for. And she says exactly, yeah. So I've seen that done. I don't know. I mean, I'm an owner, Karen. I like to own things because I like, it's my personality. I like taking responsibility. I know that's sort of an odd thing in our society, but I like to take care of my family. I like to take care of my properties. I like to take care of my guests. I want control of the properties that I have on one beach. I'm trying to buy the block so that I could redevelop it into condos and retail on the front pay on the front first floor. So that's why, Karen, I like ownership more than the arbitrage thing. But I've seen arbitrage done, and I think it works. And if you do it legally, I don't know. I mean, does the landlord? I would say, does the landlord, the owner of the property, know that you're going to basically sublease it out? If not, then you may want to tell them. And if the landlord's fine with that, then hey, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But that's a great question, Karen.
Yeah,
Great.
Karen's been asking great questions. We have a lot of great questions.
Holy
And then she asked a follow-up. Look at this. The landlord would need to know, can you offer them a cut legally?
Yeah, the landlord, you mean if you're doing like the arbitrage thing? Yeah, I think so. I think you can. And again, I tend to be more of a outspoken, disclose everything up front. And then if there's a problem, you're going to know it up front before you get into the deal. So I don't see any illegality in offering the landlord a cut if you do the rental arbitrage system. I would just make sure that the landlord and you, the short-term renter or the short-term landlord, make sure that what you're doing is legal, that it's zoned correctly, neighborhood is fine with it, that you get licensed with DBPR and with any municipality or the county. Make sure that they allow transient housing. So if you do that, that's good. And then I would say absolutely, I'd give them a cut. Any landlord, if someone came to me and asked me to do that, I would probably not get a cut. What I would do is I'd probably just charge them an extra $500, $1,000 a month. I would charge them, you do whatever you want. I'm charging you $2,400 a month or whatever it is, and you pay for it. And you can make any money above that. So good question, Karen. Holy mackerel.
Yeah, Karen's been on a roll. And anybody else has questions right now? I think we have another one, but anybody else has questions right now? You have Mike Guju right here, Michael Guju, the Guju Law Firm. And Mike, we're going to keep putting up how to get in touch with you, your email, your phone number. We just keep cycling through everything. But we've had a lot of great questions. And let me just dive down here. And then Frank Spalding. Frank, how you doing, Frank? Is there a way to fight the HOA, COA, and win the right to do STRs?
Well, again, the way the law looks at that is when you bought in the condo, when you bought in your association, there were documents that are made official records. They're made of record. So when you bought that house, and usually it's a house or a condo or apartment, you took that ownership pursuant those documents. That's why when you buy a condo, you better know those condo documents. If you buy in an association based like a PUD, you better know those documents. Okay, what you can and can't do, particularly if you're going to do short-term rentals. Is there any way to fight it? Yeah. What I would do as an attorney, you could see my back goes up. If the association is wrong, then I point out to them that it's wrong. If they want to change the rules and regulations, they better make sure that they do it legally. They better make sure that they abide by the regulations, just like I have to if I'm a tenant there. So is there any way to fight it? Yeah, I think you have to determine whether you're right. Did you buy that unit with a 30-day minimum rental restriction? If so, you're sort of bound by 30 days. You're not going to be able to go and try to convince the board to go to a week, because those documents were filed on that condominium association 20 years ago. Everyone's been following the rules. Now you want to change it. I don't think that's going to fly. But if they're not following it, it is. Al, there's a couple of things like I love these comments. Kobe, ethical bribe to the landlord for the arbitrage? Yeah, probably. Penny, yeah. My personality is one of a protector. it's called husbandry, believe it or not. Yeah, that's my personality. I know it's weird. These are great comments.
Oh, yeah.
I'm apparently talking too much. I hate the dog hair, Petty. Some shit. Oh, yes, we've had that where I've had to pay my people more because the dog hair is like an inch deep on everything. They have it in the bathtub. They have it under the beds. They have it.
And Mike, Karen made another comment also about going back to the HOA. She said not only are they signing an HOA disclosure when they contract, but they are made aware at closing via title company as well.
Right. Yes, I own a couple title companies. I've closed, I don't even know, over the many years, 25 years, tens of thousands of transactions. Yes. You sign on that, these deed restrictions, you have to follow them. To fight an HOA, you really have to be in the right. And to do that, you have to know the rules. You have to know what the HOA has been allowing in the past. You have to really, have the facts on your side and the law on your side too.
Mike, before we wrap this up, I want to make sure we get your contact info. Everybody can reach out to Mike and ask any questions. And he's an attorney here in Florida, right? So, yeah. Mike, you had something interesting to say before we wrap it up, but you had something interesting to say even backstage about, like, you're an investor yourself. Like, where you are at right now, how are you doing your investing after all these years? Like, what stage are you at right now? Because it's amazing when you talk about it.
Yeah, everyone, folks, Al and I talked about this before we got on. Number one is this. I don't know, honestly, if now is a good time to be buying real estate. And the only reason why I say that is prices are high. There's incredible demand because of the pandemic, people moving from north down to beautiful Florida, because Florida is like a great place to live. Why wouldn't they move here? There's a job paradigm shift. How do you work? A lot of people are working at home, working remotely. One of my sons is a computer engineer. He works for a startup, and he could work literally anywhere in the world. I think the prices for real estate are high. I think when you look at a variety of indices, you'll see that the prices are high. Interest rates, on the other hand, are very low. You could get, I did a closing the other day. It was 2.99% 30-year fixed on a person's first home. So that's 3%. Anytime you could lock an interest rate for 30 years, that's good. You absolutely run into that. So what have I been doing? The only real estate that I've been buying are those that are strategically placed and important to my other properties. If it comes available, I will look at it. I'm refining. I want to refi as much as I can to lock in these lower interest rates, because I don't know what's going to happen later this year or next year or what have you. Let's see. Now, also, a lot of it has to do with your stage in life. As you could tell, I'm not a spring chicken. I'm older, so I'm 61 now. I'm very healthy and very active and what have you, but at the same time, am I going to be working forever? All right, so I'm not a 35-year-old who's in the stage of buying more and more and more. Okay, which are where I was. Now I'm sort of consolidating. I'm going out and I'm picking and choosing what I keep, what I don't keep. So I've sold this year several properties because it's a good time to sell. But at the same time, last year I bought a strategic property. There's another property I'm looking at that's a strategic property it complements some of the other things I'm doing. So that's sort of where I am. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know, Penny, if they're doing 3% on investment property. It's a little bit higher that I see, but you might be able to do that. The 2.99%, that 3% that I closed on, was for a homestead property and for first-time buyers. So I just saw that. Kobe, you might be older, I don't know, but my stage in my life is now I'm looking at, okay, a longevity. Okay, let's simplify, let's solidify, Let's try to get something that is a long term that doesn't require me to be so hands on. Does that answer your question, Al, in a very long winded way?
No, it's great. I mean, hey, look, it's where you are at with your stage in investing, right? You're not
Yeah.
31 and now maybe interested in it. Like you've been doing this so long and looking at all these properties and cashing out, doing different refis and doing development, different projects. So it's a matter of like where you are at your stage. But there's so many different people that are at different stages. So it's interesting to see
Right.
where you're at. And obviously I'm excited to see where you're going to go with it in the next 5 years, 10 years. So, hey, Mike, this has been great. I mean, loved having you on. Find Michael Guju. He's at the Guju Law Firm. And
I'm in. I'll give you my office number. It's 727 area code 727 Land Law. Now that's simple. Land Law, LANDLAW, and you'll go to a switchboard to ask, talk to the operator or whatever the case is. If you want to see my properties, remember I talked about properties on the beach. Let me give you a website. It's www.reddingtonshores, the number 4 rent.com. I'll say that again. Reddington, RED as in dog, INGTON, shores, for rent.com. And you could see that was a website I did myself. I was one of my first websites. So and you could send me notes from that. Let's see what else.
And we got your email up there. We got the phone number, the Gucci Law Firm, the Facebook page that I checked out. I didn't know if you had any of that, but we found the Guju Law Firm Facebook page.
There you go.
Find Mike out there, ask questions. And Mike, before we go off air, any final thoughts, final words, final wisdom on the whole Airbnb short-term rental market?
Well, I think it's good if you organize it right, and I'm very organized. My thinking and the way I like things in my life, I'm very organized, and it works out for me. I make some pretty good money doing it. I like to employ people and keep them busy and share the wealth with them. I think it's a good thing. I think Airbnb is really designed not necessarily to be an absentee landlord, but to be an on-site host. So Airbnb is really set up for someone who has a 4-bedroom house. The kids are gone. You just rent out one room or the mother-in-law suite to one person for 3 nighs. The host is on site. The guest is on site. It was sort of set up for that. So I'm thinking maybe if I ever retire, which I probably won't, but if I ever do, I may go down to my properties and live there and just putz around, take care of broken storm doors, because I like keeping my hands busy. I like being on the beach, that type of thing. So that's, but I do appreciate this, Al. This has been great. It went fast. We're almost an hour and a half. I can't believe it. We've spent an hour and a half talking about this.
I know. Backstage, you were like, "No, we're at an hour. We're having a lot of fun." And look at that, almost an hour and a half.
Yeah, I'm surprised. This time went fast. I figured it would be 30 minutes, and then I'd be bored.
This is what happens when you come on the Al Nicoletti Show. It's educational and fun. We have a great time, and time flies, and we learn a ton of stuff. So, Mike, thanks again. And I saw another comment. Last comment from Karen was, "This was very informative. I'm a first-time joiner. Thank you for sharing your knowledge." Karen, this is the show, right? We want to provide education, knowledge, and give back and make sure you learn from some of the best in the business. And here you have Michael Guju, attorney for more than 35 years that understands this stuff. He's seen it from the municipal side, the title side, and the lawyer side. So, Mike, thanks so much again. I'll see you soon. I'll let you know when I come into town for lunch, and we'll go to lunch.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. It's nice to.
Take care. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for that. That was great. If you want more information, everybody, make sure you check out the Al Nicoletti YouTube channel under Al Nicoletti and the Facebook business page under Al Nicoletti and the profile. Tons of content, tons of micro content out there, just like all the amazing guests that I've had on the show. You can check it out on iTunes and Spotify. These are great guests that I'm bringing on the show, like Michael Guju. These are people that are in the community focusing on Florida that can help you take your business to another level that you can contact. Reach out to Mike. Find out how you can get more into this area or what he's doing on his end with the investor side. But these are guests that I'm bringing on that are providing amazing value, amazing content. Stay around, stay tuned. Tons more coming. All the past episodes that are on the YouTube channel and the Facebook business page and the Instagram channel that's dropping all the micro content all the time at Attorney Nicoletti. And we're going to have more amazing guests every Wednesday. So I will see you next time on the Al Nicoletti Show. Take care.